From Chris TV, this is Chris 6 News at 5.
Absolute tragedy today. A high school boy visiting Corpus Christi on a school trip is missing in the Gulf this afternoon.
And the choppy surf conditions aren't making the search efforts any easier. Thank you so much for joining us at the top today. The search continues for a swimmer near Bob Hall Pier.
A 16-year-old boy was in the water just with a group of friends when he disappeared. The search started at mile marker 234 and has spread south toward the national seashore. Now, Jane Caffrey's been out on the island since the search began around 11 o'clock this morning. Jane, any sign of that missing boy yet?
Jen, at this point, crews are just going up and down along the beach looking for any sign of that missing high schooler student. Now, we've got a bird's eye view from our mast cam, and as you can see, the beach is a little quieter here. Those crews have moved south towards the national seashore, but you can see the choppy conditions that led to the young man being pulled underwater. Now, we are learning more about this young man. He's a 9th grader at Lake Ridge High School. That's in Mansfield, Texas, near Fort Worth, and he was visiting Corpus Christi on a school trip for a state competition at the American Bank Center. We're also learning that his family is heading to the area from the Dallas area, expected to be here this evening. Now, we're told that the boy was swimming right here next to Bob Hall Pier with classmates and a chaperone just minutes before he disappeared. There's been a lot of activity here at the beach today. Police, Beach Patrol, Nueces County EMS, even Border Patrol going back and forth, and of course Coast Guard helicopters doing aerial searches. We spoke with an eyewitness who made a call that started this massive search just after watching the boy disappear.
There's 5 teens out there. Just waiting around, went a little too far, but in this area you got to be careful with the waves.
He was not a strong swimmer, so we're hopeful that he's going to be found unharmed, but we're frantically searching.
And the conditions so rough out here. There was even a brief scare earlier that one of the lifeguards in the search had gone missing. Crews have, for the most part, pulled out of the water and are continuing their search from the beach and from the air. Now, we're also learning that the 4 other students that were swimming with the boy have gotten out of the water safely earlier today. So far, none of them have reported injuries. And the students that were on the trip here to Corpus Christi are returning to Mansfield immediately. Reporting live at Bob Hall Pier, Jane Caffrey, Chris 6 News.
So much, Jane, and now we want to tell you more about that missing teen. He's a 9th grader at Lake Ridge High School, which is in Mansfield near Fort Worth.
And the boy was in town for the Skills USA state competition happening over at the American Bank Center. Right now, as Jane said, those students who were at the competition, they're being rounded up so that they can be taken back home. Andrew Ellison is continuing with our team coverage. He's live over at the American Bank Center. Andrew, what can you tell us?
Yeah, that's right. As you mentioned, they're being rounded up to go back home to be with their families, given everything that's happened. I'm going to step out of the way for a minute and have my cameraman here zoom in as far as we can. If you kind of look out in the distance, you can see close to the front entrance of the American Bank Center. You should be able to see a number of buses from different school districts. There are lots of school districts taking place in this Skills USA Texas competition where students come and compete at a number of different events. We haven't seen any buses that specifically say Mansfield ISD, but they could be renting buses that don't necessarily have the district's name on them. But we haven't seen any buses that specifically say that. The district does tell us that they're rounding up kids as fast as they can to get them back home to be with their families. That's what we know at this time. They're working as fast as they can. Jane may have mentioned this in her shot. They also have faculty and staff that are staying behind at the beach to help law enforcement in any way they can with the search. That's what we know right now. Back to you.
Thank you so much, Andrew, and we'll see him again at 6 o'clock. You know, we've been following this story since this morning. Crews are working to find the teen, but when you saw Jane's live shot out there, you can tell that it's windy out there, and that's complicating the search.
Yeah, it doesn't make it any easier. We're going to check in with Dale Nelson this afternoon for a quick look at the surf conditions. Dale?
That's right. The surf conditions were bad today, and the reason was because of the winds that Stephanie had just mentioned that came in with the cold front this morning. So this incident happened about the time the front arrived, and we had peak wind gusts of over 30 miles an hour, and certainly out at the beach as well. Now, the wind gusts right now are still at 35 miles an hour. It's still strong, and the winds are whenever they're not perpendicular to the plane of the beach, that's when you have rip current risk go up. And with the winds coming out of the northeast this morning, you get the rip current risk, and that causes problems and makes for very, very dangerous conditions as far as being in the water. Now, our winds are strong right now, sustained, but they are going to slowly come down, but not until after 11 o'clock tonight. So some of the activity as far as search and rescue may be hampered by the winds until after midnight, when the winds will continue to slowly come down into tomorrow. What's that mean for the weekend? We'll tell you in a few minutes, but let's take another look from our mass cam live outside, and you can see the very rough surf. Anytime the water is murky, you know that these rip current risks are going on because the angle of the wind is not perpendicular to the shoreline, and so that's when you want to stay out of the water when it's murky like it is right there, and rough as well. Jennifer?
Gail, thanks so much for the info. Well, Corpus Christi police are still trying to gather information about an apparent attempted kidnapping that happened yesterday. A 13-year-old girl says she was grabbed from behind by a man near Zavala Elementary School. Now, Priscilla Torres is live in the area of that attempted kidnapping. Priscilla, what do police know about this man?
Jen, CCPD says they have received several tips, but they don't plan on stopping there. They plan to have a heavy presence in this entire neighborhood until that man has been found. Now, we want you to take a look at these surveillance photos provided by Zavala Elementary and see if you recognize this man or his car. CCPD tells us they got the 911 call this past Wednesday just after 5 p.m. The 13-year-old girl told police that she was walking down the 3100 block of Ruth Street, which is right in front of Zavala Elementary, when a man began following her. The young girl told police the man grabbed her from behind and covered her mouth, but she was able to fight him off and ran to a nearby home and called police. Surveillance images show the man getting into a dark four-door car and taking off. People who live in this area say they're still in complete shock.
I just couldn't believe it. I just could not believe that that happened here, you know? I mean, there's so many kids, and then they all go and play at the park. And I mean, how can you just, you can't even let your kids out no more.
Those surveillance photos were taken from a surveillance camera on this campus, just like the one that we're showing you. Now, coming up at 6, hear from the CCISD police chief about how many of these CCISD campuses actually have surveillance cameras. Reporting live, Priscilla Torres, Chris 6 News.
Thank you.